Yeah, but the flip that's happening, that's going to be coming, now we're getting a little bit into what's coming in the future, is going to be accepted. Just like it's accepted right now, it's in the future is going to be in the Middle East, what they call the Middle East. You know, there are going to be 10 nations that are going to basically come together like the EU did, but not in that capacity, in a different capacity. And it'll be a Middle East union, a very loose one, but they are going to be working in unison together. And all this stuff that's going on in the Middle East right now is just strictly to denationalize the area. What I mean by that is you cannot have, let's say, using the EU as a paradigm or a model, if France is too nationalistic and they don't get along with Germany, and Greece is too nationalistic and they don't get along with Italy, you can't form a union. Right. So what you do is you go in there and you destabilize all the centralized governments and you put in people that are docile and complacent, and they all come together. Right? You can't have nationalism and sectarian fighting or even religious fighting. Right. So what you're seeing now going on in the Middle East, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because the two main things that people are discussing in the news is the election and what's going on in quote unquote Syria. But they're not talking about Yemen. They're not talking about what's going on in Saudi Arabia. They're not talking about what's going on in Israel because it's what they're being allowed to see. But essentially, there are 9 countries right now. We're waiting for a 10th one to come on the scene. And when this 10th one comes on the scene, yes, a new country, a new old country. It's so old everyone's forgotten about it, but their people are still here. And when they come together as a nation, then that Middle East Union will be formed. And now you have your final New World Order, your final Earth's man-made powerhouse kingdom, let's say, or centralized part of the world will be there. And that's not going to begin for the next few years. And the country that you're looking for is a country called Assyria. Not Syria, Assyria. And it's interesting how cosmically there's an irony how Syria is in the news a lot. And very often when I've discussed privately and publicly the formation of a new country for the Assyrian people, they say, you mean Syria? I mean, no, not Syria, Assyria, the Akkadian, Chaldean people. So, and they're spread out throughout the entire world right now, and they do not have a country. They haven't had a country in 2,300 years. And the reason why they didn't have a country for so long is because in ancient times, their primary resource was war. That's all they did. When they wanted something, they got together and just did war and just took on. They were real badasses. They had the most evolved and most fearsome siege works and war machinery known to man. And I believe cosmically, if they were not put down and dissolved, we wouldn't be here right now. So, but this country, this people will revive their nation. And when it is revived, and by the way, where is Assyria? It's in northern Iraq. It's in the area of the Euphrates and the Tigris, and it's called the Nineveh Plain. And when it forms, it's going to take a little bit of land from Turkey and Syria, and those two areas are in contention, and Iraq. And all those three, when you say Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, those are all places right now that are in the heat. And the entire world will focus on this area. So the Russians being in Syria right now is nothing. Yes, it's something. It's important because it's showing, the U.S. has been there and the Russians are there now. So you have the two military economic superpowers that are involved there, almost surrendering their position. If those that know what's coming will see that the U.S. involvement and Russian involvement in that part of the world is not an escalation, but it's them being prepared to play second fiddle on the world stage, not first fiddle, because first fiddle, the leading group and the New World Order will be in the Middle East. So there's your little future. There's your news before it's news.
And that's the purpose, actually, behind what seems to be a senseless balkanization. That's a term I use all the time, of places like Iraq, of the decentralization of power there is to create a vacuum so that this nation could be formed. It's actually a very strategically sound way to do it. Much like the Third Reich rose because of the vacuum of power that was created that allowed the National Socialist Party to rise as it did. on a smaller scale, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, these people will be peaceful, though. They will not rise in the nature that they were known for. But they will be a force to be reckoned with. And one of the main world characters is going to be Assyrian in the future. He will be one of the most powerful people ever on the face of this earth, who has ever lived, actually, will come out of that group of people. And we can also discuss that in the future. There's something that in other words, when these things start to happen, people will just accept it. And if you know of them now, you will not be in the frustration or in the sense of wonder. And that something is understanding that humanity is in a terminal condition. In other words, everything that people are looking at, will not be here in the next couple of decades or less. Just give them more leeway, because if we actually give them time frames, it's kind of senseless at this point. But if you look at, for example, a few decades ago, when captains of industry and governments related to the public, they were always discussing public works, new highways, new bridges, infrastructure, better schools, in large ideas like the New Deal concepts, multi-generational talk. Right now, none of them are saying anything. They're only being reactionary. Only when something happens do they make a statement. It's as if all of the authority of the world has retracted from making any statements beyond a decade or two. Have you noticed that?